talk present solution, and we want to present our findings in topics of the quality story, assessing the risk of Amazon Web Services. And here are our consultants: legal consultant Marvelyn, Max Sangonso as the strategy consultant, Holland as financial consultant, and Muhammad Jarar as our policy consultant. And so the topics that we want to talk today, it is the overview, the problem, the solution, and the analysis. And so the industry overview. So data centers is the backbone of our IT system. And generally, it is used in a large facilities, and usually it consumes 2% of global electricity. In one hyperscaler data centers, it consumes at least 80,000 of households, which equivalent to numbers of households in Santa Clara, California. And also the number of market service, the market size is $263 billion, and it will exceed more than triple in the next decade. And so if we're talking about data centers, Amazon here, or your company, is the forerunner of data centers. And so in 2022, you already have 32% of market shares, and also the incredible revenue growth of 45 billion in 2020, and it will exceed at the end of this year by $80 billion. Moving forward to the problems, Amazon, or your company, which is the forerunner of cloud computing services, will be, so your company, the biggest cloud computing services, impacts of it produces a lot of electronic waste in the future, because you're the leader of the market, which means that you also need to know the essential facts of e-waste in our community, in our environment. Moving forward, we'll talk about the environmental impacts of our e-waste. So it's hard for e-waste or electronic waste to decompose, and it takes thousands of years. And even if it's polluted in our environment, it will also impact our food supply chain. Not only it impacts our environmental, it also impacts our health. It can damage our intellectual abilities, lung function, and even change our DNA. And also, in some cases, it will also lead to negative birth outcomes, such as premature birth and also stillbirth. So it is essential for us to know how impactful is e-waste. So if you want to see how big is the e-waste problem, in 2020, 350 cruise ships, it is illustrated from end to end. You draw a line, 350 cruise ships from end to end, and stretching 78 miles. That's a total of e-waste in 2020. And it's only 15% of them that can be recycled. And so if we want to specify more of the carbon emissions, it is one computer in one data center equals to 700 of carbon emissions per year, produces 700 pounds of carbon emissions per year. And in one data center, there's at least 80,000 of computers. And in the US, there's at least 2,500 data centers, which means that e-waste and carbon emission in our data centers, in your data centers, impacts our environment and also our health. And so moving forward, our strategy consultant will provide you the solution to our e-waste problem.
Thank you very much. So now we have talked about the problems. Let's move on to solutions. So we propose sustainable hardware ecosystem for AWS to solve the problems and also to be the leader in sustainability. Let me explain you about every step of our ecosystem in more detail. First, we believe that Amazon should start at-the-door pickup service for the electronic devices. So, inspired by the Amazon's mission to be the most customer-centric company on earth, we have decided to start our process from our precious customers. So this is Jeffrey, and while he was cleaning his basement, he found an Amazon Kindle, which he had not been using over the last 5 years. And after he read all the articles about the harmful effects of electronic waste, he wants to make sure that it is properly processed. So he just casually logs into Amazon.com, and before he adds another Bluetooth speaker to his shopping cart, he clicks on Sustainable Hardware Ecosystem menu, and then he requests a pickup for his Amazon Kindle. And in return, he would get a small amount of Amazon gift cards, and then he would go back to shopping on Amazon.com. So Amazon receives Jeffrey's request for pickup. Now they have to make a small adjustment to their delivery schedule. And on the next day, Amazon delivery truck, which happened to be visiting Jeffrey's neighbor Bill, makes an additional stop at Jeffrey's and picks up the electronic device from Jeffrey's front door. And this van transports Jeffrey's Kindle back to Amazon Hub. So responsible consumption is one of the most important aspects in terms of sustainability, but often it is very hard for a single stakeholder to achieve the goal of sustainability, but usually it requires some collaboration to be more effective. So two of the biggest reasons that big proportion of e-waste not being handled correctly are that the process are often too costly and complicated for consumers to participate in. And Amazon, the biggest online retailer, distributes the most number of electronic devices to everyone's house. So from now on, rather than shifting responsibilities onto consumers once consumers buy their product, we urge Amazon to take more responsibility for the products they distribute. So by providing at-the-door electronic device pickup system, using Amazon's excellent accessibility and supply chain, the hurdles for disposal of e-waste would be cleared, and Amazon can make the whole process much more easier and simpler. In other words, Amazon can make responsible consumption much easier. So now that we have gathered our electronic devices, it's time to recycle. The partner electronic device recycling company picks up all the electronic devices gathered from household, including Jeffrey's Kindle. And Jeffrey's Kindle is properly processed for recycling, and materials from aluminum, copper, to even the very valuable resources such as gold and palladium are collected. Let's break down the partnership into more detail. The goal of this strategic partnership is to benefit on the both sides. So Amazon has to pay recycling company for their recycling services. But in return, Amazon would get the priority when it comes to the acquisition of recycled materials. And Amazon can also conduct efficient operation by saving internal investment costs. For example, if Amazon had to make an internal recycling center, it would have cost them a lot of money. But here we're using external service provider, which makes it more efficient. And also collaborating with local partners. By collaborating with local partners such as recycling company, Amazon can also contribute to sustaining and creating more local jobs. And recycling company, on the other hand, would secure a source for stable supply of electronic devices, which they require to keep their operations going. And also, recycling company could minimize their transportation process because Amazon is helping them in terms of transportation. They could focus merely on the recycling process. So, before the journey of Jeffrey's Kindle continues, let's take a moment to see what kind of effort should AWS put into their own manufacturing process. So we believe that AWS should invest in development of less carbon embodied materials, especially the ones that could be used for hardware manufacturing. The nature of cloud computing leads to massive carbon emission, and minimizing it is a very universal goal, challenge to the cloud computing industry. As part of the initiatives, AWS has minimized embodied carbon by using materials such as steel and cement that with less embodied carbon. And surprising for their construction of new data centers and their own headquarters as well. And surprisingly, these companies that develop such materials are both supported by Climate Pledge Fund, which is a $2 billion fund run by Amazon with the goal to support innovative research and development that would lead to more sustainable business processes. So we suggest AWS to look for and support companies that could develop less carbon embodied materials that could also be used in the manufacturing process. And in addition, we also believe that AWS should add criteria of recyclability when they're designing and manufacturing their own hardwares. So inadequate design of hardwares are the main reasons that deteriorate the recycling efficiency. For example, a computer hardware that is too complex to dismantle and recycle, and also glued materials from hardware cannot be properly recycled. And the basic reason for this problem is that these hardwares are not designed to be recycled at the first place. So we want AWS to include plans to recycle on the design of their own hardware manufacturing. This would not only boost the recycling efficiency, but also it would be a good business practice that could inspire other companies as well. So let's go back to the journey of Jeffrey's Kindle. The recycled materials from Jeffrey's Kindle are used to manufacture hardware for AWS. And these sustainable hardwares are supplied to AWS data centers, and these are used for AWS's operation. These are the expected results from our proposed solutions. First, it started from Jeffrey's basement to now fully utilized in Amazon AWS's data centers, creating much more value to much more people. This means that we can fully utilize unused electronic devices from people and put it into much better use and make a much better world at the same time. And with this process of our solution, we can enable less carbon embodied data center and the less carbon embodied infrastructure as a whole, while also being more eco-friendly. And in addition, Jeffrey's Kindle's journey does not necessarily end here, but it would continue its journey in 3 to 5 years when the hardware has to be recycled, replaced, and recycled again. So overall, our solution provides a collaborative environment for stakeholders who share the same goal of achieving sustainability. And also, once our ecosystem is successfully implemented and functions effectively, we should definitely expand our ecosystem to global level because AWS is the global leader. And For the last but not the least, AWS's reputation as a leader in sustainability will only be strengthened with our solutions. So from now on, we will continue our presentation with analyses on our solution, starting with the financial analysis.
Thank you for our strategy consultant. And now I know what you're thinking. Like, is our solution profitable or not? And where's the numbers? So now let me walk you through our financial analysis step by step based on our solutions. So the first step of our sustainable hardware ecosystem is to collect all of the e-waste from each community. So we believe that this investment will be low because Amazon already has an efficient supply chain network. In addition, by providing Amazon gift card, we expect that your company, will receive a total of $74 million in the overall revenue in the long run. Next, the second step of our sustainable ecosystem is that to build a partnership with the recycling companies. And we believe that we predict that we will get a total of $176 million of recycling e-waste profit. We can even comfortably predict that even higher profit your company will get in the long run, because as more participants join our ecosystem, the more profits we can get. The third step of our sustainable hardware ecosystem is to support the development of our hardware. So we suggest your company to continually work on the 2 billion climate pledge round and add one more criteria in this round to support the hardware manufacturers to develop more sustainable and more recyclable electric materials. By conducting this, we believe that your company will not only benefit from the supply from the hardware manufacturers, but your company will also gain a potential profit by applying for the patent based on our one and only sustainable hardware ecosystem. Lastly, the most valuable and the most profitable assets your company will gain is the reputation and the goodwill. We believe that we aim to establish your company as not only the market leader in data centers, but also a pioneer in developing sustainable hardware to support the data centers. And now I will introduce our legal consultant, and she will provide more details in legal aspects.
So in our legal analysis, we want to know if our proposed product follows these two policies. One is from the United States, EPEAT, and the other one, WEEE, waste from electrical and electronic equipment from European Union. And the EPEAT, it is a global rating system which allows to know the manufacturers use energy efficiency, which we will have in our proposed hardware. And it's also in our proposed hardware, we limited amount of hazardous waste and also a good end-of-life management. And for the WEEE, it wants to make sure that our proposed hardware is properly handled at the end of life cycle. And so, for your company to be prepared to follow these policies in the future, we provide you some following steps. The first steps, when you want to design the hardware, sustainability needs to be the forefront of your design. So it needs to be energy efficient and easy to disassemble. Secondly, the product needs to have limited of hazardous materials. Third, partnership with local collection system and also recycling companies. Fourth, report to the government entities if you want to commercialize the product in the future. Moving forward, our policy consultant will propose you our ethics.
Thank you. My name is Gerard, and I'm the policy consultant for this team. I'm going to talk about the ethical analysis. And there are many reasons as to why this is an ethical problem, and a very strong one. You see, it relates to the Sustainable Development Goal called Responsible Consumption and Production, and it relates to the target at the bottom that says that we need to substantially reduce the waste generation through prevention, reduction, recycling, and reuse. Why is e-waste a problem? It's a problem because it's generated in massive amounts. By massive, I mean to the tune of 50 million metric tons every year globally. And according to United Nations, the rate of recycling is less than 40%. And in continents like Africa and South America, the rate is even less than 2%. And these are the continents which are at the which bear the brunt of e-waste, which is exported to them from the developed countries. So this is a massive problem. And what happens when e-waste is not handled properly? It lands in the landfill sites and it pollutes the environment. It pollutes the waterways, which people rely on for their drinking needs. And sometimes it's also burned in the air, and then it releases toxins and fumes in the air. Now, talking about the resource and energy utilization, the target says that we need to reduce. We need to focus on reduction. So how do we do that? We do this by the solution that we propose, the sustainable ecosystem. The sustainable ecosystem has two parts. It's also responsible consumption and production. There are two types of consumers in our ecosystem. One consumer is the customer of Amazon who orders an electronic through the Amazon website, uses that laptop, tablet, phone, and after a few years discards it. Amazon picks up that phone, takes it back to the recycling facility, and then processes that and goes to the manufacturing and goes back to the data center. The second consumer in our case is the Amazon itself. The AWS is the biggest consumer. It has so much hardware in its data centers, which they discarded after every few years. So that hardware which is being discarded, it goes to the recycling plants, from recycling to the manufacturers, back to the data centers. So that's a closed loop. That's a revolutionary supply chain. The second goal, which I want to talk about, is the partnership. We are doing a lot of partnership in this supply chain, and this supply chain is not possible without the partnerships. So we have a social responsibility. Now, Amazon, being the market leader, it has a social responsibility towards the environment and the ecosystem it's operating in. What does this mean? It means that only AWS and Amazon has the potential, resources, and the capital to make an ecosystem in which all the stakeholders operate in a mutually beneficial way. They operate in a way that is win-win situation for everyone, because you're doing it at such a big scale that you make it profitable for everyone. Because smaller companies, they cannot do it at a smaller level. They want to do it in an environment which is at a large scale, so that their cost of doing business is less, and it's not only profitable, but it's also sustainable. The natural segue to this point is that you have to set an example. You are an industry leader. You are setting an example for other companies to follow suit. You are telling them how to do business. You are driving a point home that you can be a market leader, you can be profitable, and you can still care about the planet as well. That's what I want the board to take from this presentation, that you want to make this point home, that you can be profitable and still care about the planet. Summary of the key messages: that the large amount of waste is generated globally. We have a sustainable ecosystem, and it's financially viable, legally sound, and ethically prudent. Thank you so much, the board.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Well done. If we could spend a couple minutes from the board perspective on the ethical analysis that you did. Can you help us understand why you define it as an ethical issue when it also could be considered a market issue? to achieve those outcomes as opposed, why is it defined as an ethical issue?
So there are two parts to our ethical issue. First part is obviously its concerns with the environment. Any waste that is generated by AWS is directly impacting the environment. It is directly impacting humans, it is directly impacting animal life. So this becomes an ethical problem. The second part is the responsibility. When you are operating at such a big scale in a market, you have responsibility towards your environment and the other stakeholders in that environment as well. And you want to give back to the community. It sounds like a market problem, but it's more like an ethical problem. Like you're not legally required to do that, but ethically you should, because you are the market leader, and that's what's expected of you.
Thank you. Judges?
Sir. What's the risk to the company if we don't implement your solutions?
So the risk of the company, if it does not follow the solution, would be just like the ethical issue that we have talked about. It would be considered irresponsible because there's not doing enough of the responsibility as a leader in the market, especially at the global level. And also the environmental effect of e-waste is a problem that should be solved by using a lot of resources and also a lot of efforts, but there isn't much of a entity that can actually do this kind of big projects, because usually the required amount of resources are too big. So in that term, I believe that AWS, as a leader, they should be taking more responsibility.
Quick follow-up, who is actually judging the sustainability portion of it? Who's going to be determining whether AWS is a good company or a bad company because they do not implement the solutions? And it's related to the comment you made initially, that
Yeah.
it can be judged by.
Yeah. So there are lots of nonprofits that specialize in working out the companies on how green they are. For example, S&P Global Green Base, they regularly publish reports. Secondly, it's the public is the judge here. Public, there are research that people think, consumers think, how green is the company they are dealing with? What are their resources? What are their supply chains? How they are procuring their stuff? And as compared to some reports which have been published, I think it's the public opinion that matters the most on how the public thinks about this company and how they are operating their businesses.
Thank you for your presentation. I was curious, so, Jamie Diamond from Chase Bank always asks, is the squeeze worth the juice, right? Will we actually make impact on the world by what we're undertaking? And I understand why you want to do it. I understand why we should do it. Can you just explain further, how will this, what is the net result? How will the world be better by these activities if Amazon goes out there? How will that reduce the carbon imprint, for example, by undertaking these activities? Do you have any statistics or anything like that you looked into?
Okay, so the impact this whole solution would make is there is an unstoppable appetite by the consumers today for electronics. Everybody wants new phone, everybody wants new tablets, everybody wants new laptop every after a few years, and the companies are in a race to build new things, because if they don't, they lose the competitive advantage and they're out of business. Where is all this new things, new production coming from? They need precious metals to produce that. They need precious rare earth metals which are being mined through extraction. And there's lots of extraction going on all the time in order to just satisfy this human need to have new tablet, new phone, and a new laptop after every few years. So when you implement this solution, it just disrupts the whole ecosystem, the whole chain, which is fueling that extraction, leading to land degradation and the carbon emissions.
Well, why can't Amazon just tell its customers, buy responsibly? You know, think twice before you get a new phone. It's your point. Or before you buy a new tablet, you know. You bought one 3 years ago, you only need to get a new one. Do we as Amazon, do we go out there and we tell people to buy responsibly, purchase responsibly, think about the impact? Do we have a message like that right now? And should we, from an ethical perspective?
When Amazon says something that you should buy responsibly, it should also provide some options to buy responsibly. And that's what we are suggesting, that we should have an option to buy responsibly. And through this ecosystem, those products will be made available at your doorstep.
You know, we have a responsibility to our shareholders, right? And isn't this really going to cut into our profit and so our dividends to our shareholders?
So, yeah, I believe it will it will bring profit to the stakeholders, because we understand that in the short run, it might not bring enough profit to the whole company. But we believe that in the long run, because like the recycling e-waste, as I mentioned, it will be around $70 million just by recycling that whole e-waste. And we conduct that, we calculate that based on the statistics that we do and the statistics that your company provided in the sustainability report. So we believe that in the long term, it will bring profits to not only the company, but also the stakeholder, and also bring the responsibility to the, like, bring your responsibility to the society as well.
Maybe this is an ethical question,
Yes.
but why is recycling? Why is that Amazon's? Why is it our responsibility? That's what I'm having trouble grasping. You keep saying it's our responsibility because we have a large part of the market share. Why is it our responsibility?
So I believe that we're not saying that it's your company's big responsibility. We're just saying that as the biggest leader in the data center market, we believe that it's a trend to be not only a market leader in the data center, but also a pioneer by conducting our ecosystem. By conducting our ecosystem, we believe that you can not only become a market leader in the data center, but also the pioneer in developing sustainable hardware. So we're suggesting that to develop more sustainable hardware, and then it's not like just taking the responsibility. It's more also like a pioneer, like the leadership in the whole data centers market.
So kind of like finding a better way of doing things that will ultimately make us more profitable.
Yes. So we believe it's like a loop, because by recycling the e-waste, we will also benefit your company, but also benefit from this recycling, because you will benefit from the supply from the hardware manufacturers. You can also use that thing in your data center, so it will be a loop, in a cycle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
AWS owns 34% of the market share for cloud computing. Would this at all help increase our market share if we implement this? Is there any impact on our ability to sell to others for our cloud business?
So I believe by doing more ethical conduct in terms of business, it'll appeal more to the consumers as well. for example, like the clients, there could be a lot of criteria when they come to choose what kind of cloud computing service we should choose. And one of the big criteria nowadays could be about the ethical parts of the companies that are doing it. But if AWS could get a competitive advantage in terms of ESG, especially the ethical part, it would probably more appeal to the clients who are considering which vendors to choose. And in that way, I believe it will be very beneficial in terms of competing in the cloud computing market.
I'm trying to understand, our cloud business are primarily, I'm assuming, have to be corporate clients. We have large corporate clients that are using our cloud to store their information. This solution is much more, it appears to be a retail solution where customers are going to recycle the products through what you're proposing. How does that directly impact AWS, which is one of our most profitable divisions we have right now? How does that impact it? Does it impact it at all? Or is this more using AWS to facilitate the recycling that you're talking about to affect the whole business?
So, although like we're collecting the e-waste from customers,
Yeah.
Furthermore, we will also in our ecosystem we also suggest that this e-waste be using after recycling, we will also put it into the data center and then reuse it, and then extend this lifespan of the data centers, the hardware in the data centers. So I believe that this whole cycle, this whole ecosystem, will help the company not just using sustainable, more sustainable hardware, but also ensure that there's enough supply from the hardware manufacturers that are partnership, but they're collaborating with.
Judges, any other questions?
Yeah, I do. So you presented some numbers up front, I think, to just define the market. And I may have missed it, so if I did, I apologize. But with respect to the numbers of the market, of the consumption and the footprint, what's our goal? What's our target as a company to hit to determine whether or not we're on target and whether or not we're successful? And what number must we hit to ultimately determine our success?
I can take this. So the number comes from the United Nations stipulated COP27, which says that the Earth's temperature should be controlled to 1.5, the change in 1.5 degree, the planet's temperature. So there are details on how much emissions would be allowed for each company, and for each country there is a quota for each country, for each sector of industry that is operating, and we will get the data from there on how much is it being allowed, how much can we do the emissions. Right now, it's beyond what has been stipulated. It's breaking any kind of records that we have. So, given in the light of instructions by the UN and the COP27, we will take that as a guiding principle and adjust that accordingly.
So where are those numbers? Where are those numbers in terms of, we know the market by what you described, presented, but what are our targets? When will we know that we are successful in achieving the goals relative to sustainability?
Yeah, the KPIs that have yet to be formulated, I believe so.
We spoke a lot about the volunteer efforts of getting people to return in their recycling and sending it off, but I didn't really hear too much about what AWS we could do internally for our own recycling. Did I miss that in the presentation? Did you consider that as part of the overall proposal, or how large of an impact we could make if we just changed our own internal operating practices?
Well, I have briefly mentioned about the process of manufacturing, and at the end, as I described, the journey of the Kindle device does not end, so it should be put back into the recycling part of the cycle. So
But
in
what
that,
about our own computers, the stuff that we use, our employees use? Are you proposing any kind of internal recycling effort there for stuff that our own employees, our own data centers create?
I can do this. So the hardware that is being used, I think there was a slide about how much emissions that one computer makes, and there are 80,000 computers in one data center, and there's 2,500 in the US alone. So that's a massive amount of emissions from the hardware which is being inside the data center. And its life is much 3 years, 4 years, after 3 years, 4 years, it's discarded. It's either burned or it's going to landfill or some other country. That amount of e-waste is also going back into the cycle. The same cycle, two sources, customers and the data centers. Both e-waste goes back to the recycling plant, manufacturers goes back to the data centers. So that's the loop we want to complete.
I think this is a strategic question. You mentioned, I believe, Amazon picking up like the Kindle, right? Wouldn't it be better for Amazon simply to print, pay for the postage, to use a third party to either pick it up or maybe even have the customer take it to UPS and then they mail it, as opposed to diverting our drivers from their normal deliveries? Because that seems like seems like maybe it could be efficient, but it seems like it's diverting from the primary mission of delivering products to our customers. Maybe a third party can handle all of the recycling and we just print the label. So, what do you think about that?
We believe that if a person has to step out and go all the way to a store, for example, UPS, with the label and send their product there, given the current kind of situation we are in, I think that's too much to ask from a customer to do that, as compared to a pickup truck that is arriving at the doorstep and asking them to give whatever you have, you're going to discard, or something that your laptop is just going to be there in your house forever. You can just give it to the store, to the van that comes to your house, that comes to your lane every single day or every other day. Why don't you have to go out of your house and give it back to you, instead of you going back to the UPS store, travel all the miles, and then, so it's I think more of an intention and the motivation factor. We believe people want to be as much motivated and to go all the way and send their discarded elements. It's just like clothes donations. If you have a clothing donation center very close by to your house, you are more likely to give it to them instead of go all the way to some other place and give all your clothes back there.
That makes sense.
Any other questions?
I've got tons more. I'll just ask one.
Okay.
You mentioned a $176 million profit by implementing your solutions, correct?
Yeah.
Again, perhaps I missed it, but what would be the cost of the investment to achieve this target? And how far into the future will we hit this target?
So, for this question, I think I believe it's a little bit hard for us to say the exact number and at this moment, but I believe it will be lower than the profit, because the profit that the profit that we calculated is based on the e-waste recycling profit that conducted by the statistics that we did, and also the sustainable report that that the data provided there.
So have you done some type of an initial analysis on the company's footprint to be able to come up with some estimate as to what the cost would be to address the issues and come up with the result of the target of 176.
So you're saying we should use footprint to estimate?
Well, I'm asking, or you shared that you haven't done the analysis yet, but I would imagine that there could be some type of an internal analysis
Yes.
to determine what the footprint is, what the cost of that is, and the cost to mitigate that footprint to reach this 176 million profit target.
There's one cost that you mentioned. We have a certain number of Amazon Prime members, which is a large number, and we are assuming that only 10% of those customer base would sign up for this program. And for that 10% of those customers, we are going to provide them the gift cards. That is our cost. So that's the cost that we have calculated for now.
Okay. Go ahead, you want to say something?
Yeah, I want to add one more. So that's not only the cost, but also the profit that we foresee for the, like, not just the short term, but also the long term.
Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Well done. All right, we could step out of our roles now as the Amazon board. You could take a deep breath. You're the biggest hurdle.
We brought up tequila broth just in case.
Hey, you are good judges.
Absolutely, we can prepare.
25 minutes, and give us a chance to give you some feedback, and if they have any questions for us as well.
So, do any of you have any feedback you'd like to share with the team?
Sure.
I do.
Sure.
I just thought it was excellent. I really like the slides, and I've seen slides where there's so much information they're hard to digest, but these slides seem to complement your statements. And it seemed as if like you kind of already knew what you were going to say, or you had thought about what you were going to say, so there wasn't, I didn't see any like real long reading off of the slides, which made the, I think the presentation more engaging. So I really like that. I like the eye contact, it was great. I think I was really impressed with your ability to answer kind of, it's hard to answer questions. And I know like, when somebody's asking me a question, sometimes there's a tendency to like go blank, right? It's like, what do I say? How do I answer that question? And sometimes the questions are kind of convoluted. But you guys were wonderful, and it was friendly, it was informative, it was, and that's kind of what you're trying to do, is you're trying to, I think, trying to have a friendly conversation with our concerns, really, and try to be, I think the other very important thing is trying to be responsive to the question. It's kind of hard, especially when it's like, what did you just ask? Right? It's like, how do I respond to that? So, what you guys did, I thought you did a wonderful job. I thought it was excellent. You guys obviously put a lot of work into this, time and thought, and I thought it was wonderful.
Good. I'm interested in knowing how you as a team decided to go about the process. What was your process in deciding everything that went into this presentation?
Lots of hit and try. We looked at the past presentations and found out there was a pattern about a company having certain resources, having some issues about the supply chain, and we found that.
No, not the company. We're out of character now.
Okay.
I'm talking about you as a team.
Okay.
So when you guys got together, how did you know you were going to become a team? And how did you know you were going to be given this subject to talk about? How did you guys interact with each other to come up with this presentation?
Okay, so we're from Business Analytics program, and at that time, the Center for Global Business Department is looking for a group of team for 3 to 4 people that wants to join this LNU PACE competition. So I just texted a couple of my friends in the class, in the Business Analytics program class, and when we're looking for the research or the topic, as Business Analytics, we use a lot of cloud computing services all the time, Google Drive, AWS, that we're learning right now. And so like the common issue that we keep seeing is how the cloud computing contributed to like a lot of carbon emission. And so we want to dive in and also be a part of the movement of the social responsibility.
Yeah, I got one follow-up question. What are you individually looking for from us in terms of response to your presentation?
I would be more interested in knowing were we successful in making a strong case or not.
I think you did. There was more information that I believe would make it stronger. In real life, you're going to come into situations where you're going to have 3, 5, 10, 20 people, and perhaps just as many personalities and different ways to assess information. There's almost nothing you can do to anticipate that, so you just do your best to try to present information. But I can share with you, I like data, I like metrics, I like sourcing. The more you connect dot A to B to C, C1, C2, D, that makes it a lot better. And I would also suggest to you that if you didn't, put yourself in our shoes and just wonder what I would want to know if somebody was making this presentation to me. And then as far as the presentation itself, I think the best advice I can give you is to manage your nerves and anxiety as best you can, but come up and just have a conversation with us. Just converse. Pretend we've known each other for 20 years and we're having a good conversation, but in that conversation you're sharing your data, and obviously you want to convince us of making a decision. But I think mentally, if you believe you're just having a conversation with somebody, your presentation, your personality will just come out a lot easier.
Thank you so much.
I just have, along the lines of Alonzo, when you were given this assignment, were you given any kind of executive summary where you asked, given a direction to follow, or how was the issue presented to you initially? Was it a paragraph? Was it a page? What did they say to you to get you to the point where you delivered today? I'm sort of curious.
So the guidelines were you have to pick a company of your own choice and analyze the legal, ethical, and financial component of how they are operating their businesses and what are the gaps they can fill.
Okay.
So it was completely, the floor was open for us to choose any company that you want and identify the gaps they have.
Okay. So you guys are the ones that picked AWS.
Yeah.
Okay. And that wasn't given to you, that was just your own.
Yeah.
And then the issue that you identified was the recycling issue.
Yeah.
And that's what you guys came up with. Okay, that helps. And so let me just say, I think you did a hell of a job. I think you gave a really strong presentation. I think that when you have to present to a board like this, there's so many different, angles that you can cut and slice and dice it. But I agree. I thought that your slide presentations, there's a logical connection to what you were saying. I thought you backed it up with information. I thought each one of you had your own individual preparation, and you had my respect in your delivery. So I thought you guys did great. And so, I felt like you cared about the organization, that you really wanted to make a change. So I'd hire you again. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Do I have a couple more comments?
Sure.
One was you used the word ecosystem, right? And it didn't really dawn on me like what that meant until later on. It was said again, and then I thought ecosystem. Oh, it's just like the natural cycle, like it rains and then it goes back down to the ocean, and so that's like the definition of sustainability, and that's what you were trying to create with e-waste.
Yes.
So that was kind of like a light bulb went off. And, So that was kind of fun. The second thing is I came up with the question about strategy, because I know I've had electronic devices and said, what do I do with this? And I've typed into Amazon, and they have a recycling system, but they will send you a label, and then you take it to UPS. And I was grateful for that. And so I was curious about the, why they don't go further to the driver. And so that's why I asked, but it does seem to me, without doing any analysis, that the driver seems like that's more efficient because you just give it to them. Assuming you use Amazon regularly.
I thought about the carbon footprint on, impacts for the driver. So there's like a net gain there, because, the guys who got fumes from the truck that are being used to pick up that little Kindle, that's a lot.
The thing is, the deliveries are going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
Secondly, Amazon is shifting completely to solar-powered vehicles by Rivian. So that vehicle that is being driven in the streets is going to be completely carbon neutral.
We gotta begin wrapping this up a little bit.
Can I make my final comment?
Okay, make it quick.
It'll be quick. I just want to congratulate you for taking this challenge and being here and doing this. You didn't have to do this, but you did, and you did a great job.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the feedback.
Yeah, so I affirm that, really congratulate you. I do want to invite you to think about the ethical question that you were asked. That is really straightforward. Why do we have an ethical responsibility for this? That question is really an important one. And, we can think about ethics really simply by thinking we need to minimize harm and we need to do good. And especially when we have power, we need to think about the responsibility of that power. And so if you think about e-waste and dangerous minerals, the extraction, the problems related to lithium extraction, you spoke to some of these things. You had a slide really important about maternal health, stillborn problems with babies. You started to point to harm. And the basic linear extractive disposal system that we have with e-waste, rare metals, dangerous compounds, etc., there's a lot of harm that's being produced. And the industry and the consumers are recognizing that. And so that's part of what was fueling your demand ideas. When there's a recognition of harm, an ethical responsibility is to work to minimize that harm. And so you would say, no, we really do think AWS has an ethical responsibility to work to minimize harm. That's exactly why we're proposing this closed loop system, because this is a responsibility toward the good that frankly the entire industry needs to engage. And everybody who's buying all the electronics needs to engage. It's kind of all of our problem. But so I would think about how you want to lean into the ethics question and describe the importance of the responsibility. That AWS and Amazon does great things, serves people tremendously, responds to really important needs, but the externalities that are produced by the industry and the technologies and the manufacturing are creating harm that isn't sustainable. And we really can be a first mover and a prime mover in turning that harm into good. Think about that kind of language, especially as you prepare for tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
And we wish you the very best tomorrow. You're over the hurdle. You got tomorrow.